Welcome back to another enlightening and heartwarming episode of the Tech Talks Daily podcast, where every single day we explore the transformative power of technology in solving real-world problems and adding tangible value to businesses. And I'm your host, Neil C. Hughes, and today I'm incredibly privileged to have a unique voice from the world of IT joining me. Someone who is not only shaping the landscape of technology and business, but also challenging and reinventing the image of leadership in the industry. Her name is Melissa Mulholland, and she is the dynamic CEO of a company called Crayon. Now, Crayon is renowned for helping organisations make the most of their software, the cloud, and IT spend, enabling them to invest in creating even more business value. But our conversation today with Melissa will not only delve into the intricacies of tech and business, but we're also going to navigate in her own personal journey, her highs, her lows, her challenges, and the incredible story that merged her personal life with her professional pursuits. It's an incredible story, so buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Oslo in Norway, where Melissa is waiting to share her story. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Thank you so much for having me, Neil. My name is Melissa Mulholland. I'm the CEO of Crayon, which is an IT tech company founded in Oslo, Norway, that's been in the industry for the past 21 years.
And there's so much I want to talk with you about today. I mean, Crayon is a great name. I'd love to find out more about that. But before we do, can I take you back in time for a moment? Can you share your origin story? Maybe there was something that ignited the spark for your love of technology and your journey towards becoming the CEO of Crayon. What happened there? Is there a story behind it? Because I feel like there's got to be.
Yeah, you're on to something. There's always a story. As I like to say, everybody has a story. I don't know if mine's that interesting, but nonetheless, I could share a little bit about my background because it is somewhat unusual to have an American running a company that's headquartered out of Norway. And in the tech industry, I would say, still very male-dominated space. So there is some clearly aspects around that. But what I would just say is I started in humble beginnings in Redding, California, Northern California. It's a small remote town, which I always dreamt of seeing bigger opportunities. I loved to travel when I was very young. And that really, I think, fueled my curiosity for people and culture and what makes the world go around. And I dreamt early on when I was probably a teenager of becoming some type of executive and taking a business course of some kind. And that really embarked when I joined Intel, the global chip manufacturer that we all know, as a finance intern. So I was studying finance because I thought, well, if I get that financial acumen, that will serve me in any type of business setting that I want to get into. And at the time, the company was making significant amount of layoffs because, like even in today's environment, companies are faced with cost pressures. And Intel thought naturally, like most companies, the quickest path to resolution is reducing personnel costs, like doing layoffs, like we're seeing today in the tech space with people over employing through the pandemic. And for me, I don't know, it hit me personally because these were my colleagues, my friends, and I thought there has to be another way in which we can reduce costs, but also I think not just do the short-term delivery, but really help sustain the business long-term. And I was studying environmental economics back when sustainability was not a word. This was not really a concept that companies had to think about. And I thought, well, Intel chips that are all in our computers and our phones can actually be recycled and turned into solar technology. Now, I don't come from a field of computer science or any kind of technology pedigree. I come from a business background, but I thought, if this is possible, we're not only doing something that's right for the environment, but we're also reducing costs and we're delivering return on investment from a business perspective. And that really was the beginning of that spark around just the IT space, because there's so much innovation, and we see it now in today's industry, that how fast things like ChatGPT and OpenAI are changing the way we think about working and the way we can access information. So long story, the company ended up putting this into production after I left, and it became one of the most sustainable companies for this work. Yeah, and then that led my curiosity to working at Microsoft. Now, I moved to Microsoft more for personal reasons, and I always believe that in life and in work, you have to really make sure that the both are happy. And in this case, I wanted to have a family and settle in Seattle, where coincidentally Microsoft is headquartered. So I worked there for 12 years, but during that time, I was embarked with so many different complexities that companies like Crayon have to face day in and day out. And I started to really see how if you really innovate through technology, it can impact people's lives. It can improve efficiencies and productivity. And I think from that point on, I really just found this love for this IT space. Because if you really want to put a dream out there, you can achieve it. And it's remarkable now, looking back, how technology's adapted to society and how much we depend on it. I mean, as consumers, users of it each and every day. So that's really what it comes down to. And I have a personal story maybe we can get to about my son and how that's manifested in my personal life. But I'll pause there and let you take it from there.
Oh, no, well, you've dangled the carrot. I'll need to find out more about that. And also, obviously, you've lived in two beautiful parts of the world, Seattle and Norway. Is there anything you miss about home? And maybe fill in the blanks there of going from Seattle to Norway.
Well, they are two beautiful places. I will say that moving up kind of the California coastline all the way up, I just kept going north, I suppose, and that just kept going. But the story really is in Seattle, where Microsoft was headquartered. I got to work with so many amazing companies around the world, some of the biggest names you can think of in today's world. And I studied them and really try to understand what made them so successful. And as a lot of companies were transitioning from on-premise data centers into a cloud-based environment, that requires a different set of skills, a different capability, different pricing model. And that's a hard shift, as we know. And back in those days, had to help advise and guide companies around how to make that transition. And while I was doing that, I was fortunate enough to give birth to my second child. And he is a medical miracle, really should not be alive today. But I was fortunate that I had access to incredible doctors who were highly skilled and were able to intervene and save his life while I was pregnant. And from that point, I made this commitment to him that I would find some way to give back in what I didn't really know at the time what that meant. I thought maybe I would volunteer or do something, but I just felt so grateful that he was here and is here alive today, because he had a rare condition in utero that without intervention, he would not have lived. But with intervention, he had less than a 2% chance of survival. So the odds were against him. And through that process, at the time, Microsoft was just releasing its new kind of brand new AI technology. This was back in 2014. So it sounds a long time ago. But at that time, it was really primitive in the sense that it was recognizing objects. So you take a picture of a Pepsi or a Coca-Cola can, and you could teach the model to say that this is Pepsi or this is Coke. And I thought to myself, what if this technology could be applied to my son's ultrasound image? Because in this situation, we were able to detect this rare circumstance due to the ultrasound looking not normal. And we did. So we trained the model, and literally for the cost of a few dollars, US dollars, we were able to train it with 99% accuracy. And I had this kind of vision of what if we were able to deploy this to hospitals around the world this would help expedite the visibility, not just for his rare condition, but for other things, cancer detection or rare defects that could be potentially mitigated or addressed. And at that point, I got really curious about AI. So I started to, let's say, study it to a certain degree, not in any professional terms. But I really got curious because I thought, wow, if we're able to do this in a couple of minutes, the technology's there. It's about taking those ideas and putting it into reality. It's bridging that. And so I met Crayon because Crayon was a company that has made its business in helping customers reduce costs and configure the right, let's say, software portfolio to run their businesses. And at the time, they were investing deeply in data because they saw that this curve would come in AI and machine learning, but they didn't necessarily know how to take it and put it into market and make it into a business. So I took that experience and guided them, and I started to see this, how do I say it, credible opportunity to really scale this around the world. And I got this opportunity to move my family to Norway during the pandemic to join Crayon and really take it on globally. At the time, I think it was more just trusting my instinct more than anything. It felt like the right decision. My head said one thing, my heart said another. But in this case, I said, I got to go with what's right for myself, my family, and the career will naturally work itself out. And thankfully it did. But I really came because I wanted to embrace that opportunity of taking, let's say, our vision statement of the company is around driving technology for the greater good. And that naturally very much ties into my personal story because my life has been forever changed due to the advancement of technology and AI in the industry.
Wow, what a powerful and inspiring story there. And especially the problems you had with your son before he was born, and then taking your family to a completely different continent during a global pandemic. Kudos to you for following your heart there. Absolutely love that. And your son right now, is everything good now?
Well, it's a good question. Yes. So as parents, there's always, I think, it's important that we prioritize what's right for our children.
Yes.
I always like to say, time that we have here is limited and it's precious. So yes, he's doing really well. I would say my kids are thriving. The other kind of reason we moved is he has autism and he has pretty severe autism. And in Norway, we were really, this concept of equality really is embedded in the culture. And so the special education that he has access to in the public school system is incredible. And I would say since we've been here over the past 3 years, I've just seen him improve so much because he's able to get resources and support and get to enjoy the benefits of what life in Norway is all about. A lot of nature, a lot of skiing, and some cold weather, but he's doing really well.
Fantastic news. Such a beautiful story. And you've had to overcome so many challenges in your career. And equally, as a woman under 40 in the tech industry, as you mentioned there, it is or has been a male-dominated industry. It is improving, but there's still so much work to be done there. And you've had to face challenges from individuals who maybe felt that you didn't fit that profile of a CEO. It's ridiculous to think. But can you share some of those experiences and how you managed to overcome them too?
Oh, it's a great question. And there's so many ways to tackle this. Yeah. I think one is really self-belief. You get to where you are because of the hard work you put in. And I think oftentimes, especially with women, I talk a lot about this, but we suffer sometimes from imposter syndrome where we don't believe we are fit to do the job, or we have self-doubt. And I think it's really important to give women, not just women, but any kind of key talent, the confidence that they can succeed and continuously to do that. I think I've been so lucky that I've had people along my way to help coach, guide, and give me that, let's say, reassurance that I am fit to do the role. And of course, naturally, there's going to be self-doubt. And I think society needs to do a lot more around training and development. Coming from an American culture, US culture, one thing is really great is there is a lot of, especially coming from a big corporation, a lot of investment in talent and training programs and ways to kind of help round out your career. I think we need to continuously invest in people. That's important because the skills, the learning that I've gained certainly has prepared me to do the job that I do today. I think the second thing is we need to advocate and support. At Crayon, we've really moved it's called the needle around gender equality in the workforce substantially, but that's not by accident. It's because we've made it intentful. So we've said, let's really make sure that we hire the best people. That's always criteria number one. But we open up our perspectives around diversity in all aspects because there's so much talent. I look at my son and he teaches me each and every day that he views the world differently than I do. And I think it's really important. Diverse workforces actually will be more, like production-wise, more profitable long-term because you're bringing all the best ideas together. So I would say when I boil it down, it comes to one, have self-belief and confidence, make sure that you have guidance and support. And to your point, yes, there's always going to be people that doubt you, but you have to put that aside and realize that the people that have doubted me in many ways have actually made me better because I've been able to take that and make it a strength rather than let it get in my way.
Love that, especially around the coaching, the guidance, the training, the development of your people. And if we just park all those old lazy stereotypes, in your view, here in 2023, what traits and attributes do you think make a successful CEO in the IT and tech industry? And how do you try and embody these in your role at Crayon too?
Oh, there's so many things. Where do I start? I think first, it comes down to people. Yeah. In technology in particular, we always say there's a war on talent, but it's a competitive space. And people choose to work not just because of pay. I always say Maslow's hierarchy of needs, compensation is not at the top of that need list. It's up there, but it's not the number one criteria. They need to be in a place where they feel happy and thriving and successful and that they are there to do the best that they can do. So I think one is the culture is really critical. And I sometimes think CEOs don't focus enough on the culture and the people side because they're solely focused on the profitability. The profitability is obviously extremely important. It is number one, and not in the sense of running a business, but it's only done with people. And so we must make sure that there's a deep thought and emphasis put on that. So I think that the culture, the people is always where I lean in. And second to that is you can't fake it. People are smart. If you don't believe in what you say, then don't say it. I have this kind of expression, which is I want to be as authentic as I possibly can. I was given this advice early on in my career. Don't try to be something you're not. And that sounds so simple, but if people see somebody that's being honest, authentic, they're going to be able to put their belief and follow in that leader to go do their job. And I think that's extremely important.
100% with you. And I love again, although we're talking about the tech industry here, is the focus on people that bring that to life. And as a result, I was reading about you before you came on the podcast today. I know you're passionate about disrupting the profile of what a CEO looks like in the IT industry. So can you elaborate on that idea? Again, why you're so passionate about that and why you think that's so important too?
Yeah, it's true because I think people have stereotypes. Men in suits or in the IT space. I talked about this with Ian King on Sky News, where they'll talk about like T-shirts and sneakers. That was a thing that became quite popular. Zuckerberg, even Satya Nadella, they have this look and feel, and people see that and then they resonate it with, okay, the typical profile is either suit or T-shirts, tennis shoes. And then they have these stereotypes of what that leadership presence is about to be. And for me, I think it's important to really be clear and focused around what are you going to do to really drive a business forward, and being authentic, being humble. I don't find oftentimes that there's I don't like to have a ton of people around me to support me, because I want to have a very lean working team, because I want to do what's right for the business. I want to be closest to the customer, closest to my employees. And entourage is the word I was thinking about. And I think the typical CEO is very guarded and has this hierarchical structure and isn't as close to the people or to the business. And I think it's time that we disrupt that. I think it's time that we shake the stereotypical mold of what you think a CEO should look like. It shouldn't matter what anybody looks like. It should be about, are they capable to do the job? Are they going to drive the business forward? And in the end, that's really what should matter.
Something else that put you on my radar was, I read that you said that a CEO is a superhuman, but not superhuman. So can you delve into that concept and explain how it informs your leadership approach too?
Absolutely. I think we are human. I like to tell people that my house is not perfectly tidied up every single day. I have responsibilities. I'm sometimes late. I forget things, and we're just people. But there is this expectation and kind of around that you are there to be perfect, and then you got this system and support ecosystem that are there to be able to do what you do. And at the end of the day, I'm just a person. I'm just grateful. I'm a humble. So I like to tell the people in the company, I'm just a humble servant of the company. That's all I am. Yeah. I'm just there in maybe a position that's more visible and that I have to lead and make decisions. But in the end, I'm not better than anybody else. And I think that equality aspect, when you ask me that question of US versus Norway, that transition, a thought occurred to me, which is what has changed and how I've changed is I'm a lot more, I think, grounded in my roots, because the Norwegian culture is very based in equality. That's something I'm seeing in my children as they are educated in the system here. That is important. It's really important that people feel appreciated and valued. And at the end of the day, I don't do it all, but I will certainly do my best to uphold as much as I possibly can. And I think that's important, to be humble.
Absolutely with you. It's so refreshing to hear you say that. And from your experience, obviously you've had a lot of challenges in your way. What would you say are the biggest lessons that you've learned as your role as CEO?
One, trust your instinct.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. And make decisions quickly. Like the ability, you're going to make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, but those mistakes and failures are lessons learned to take you into the future. But it is important to act quickly, thoughtfully, and I think also be clear around where you are going and be consistent in that. Like, again, I kind of talk about this whole authenticity piece, but what I mean behind that as well is if you make a statement and commitment, see it through. I have this very simple, and of course, I do my best to stick to it. But if I make a commitment to you, I want to see it through. And I want to continue to make sure that we're consistent around that. I think it's really important in today's era. CEOs and employees and everyone is getting fed so much information. It's so difficult to be able to kind of keep up with the environment in this digital era. So clarity, I think, is vital for CEOs in the roles that they place today, and being very consistent on that is important for people.
And I think that's a perfect moment to introduce everyone listening to Crayon. I'm conscious a lot of people listening may be hearing about you for the first time, and we are living in a period of economic uncertainty with high interest rates, inflation, and every business is challenged with doing more with less. And also every tech project is under close scrutiny for the ROI that project will deliver, what value it will deliver too. So can you share some insight into the work that Crayon is doing in helping organizations do things like optimize software, cloud and IT spend, and why that's so critical in today's business landscape?
You're right. The economy, concerns about recession, interest rates, inflation, there's so much like high cost pressures that every CEO, CIO that I speak to is always thinking about how do they make more out of less. So Crayon really built its business 20 plus years ago around guiding customers around what is actually needed to run their business, because customers and the companies don't intend to buy more than they need to. But it's easy to do because companies like Microsoft, it's how they make their money. And so what we do is we really come in and we assist and listen to what is it that you actually need, and then let us evaluate and assess through our IP, through our knowledge, how to economically run your business in a way that is going to help you maximize that total return. And we do so in a very proactive way. We don't just do it once and we're done. We are there to support and guide and continue as that. So it's been really key to our success. I always say that one of our top priorities is being customer centric. And what I mean by that is listening. And because if I can't tell you what you need, I need you to inform me what's your biggest problem. And then I can help guide you around that. So that's been the culture of the company. And it's, to be honest with you, one of the reasons why I joined, because I found it refreshing to be in an environment where our people are just excited to support what helps solving day-to-day business challenges. And then, of course, that manifested to the cloud. And cloud adds a lot of cost. I mean, you can debate between cheaper versus having a data center, but at the end, I do believe it is, but it's also about how you leverage that in the most effective way. So there's a lot of cloud waste out there. People are using workloads that they may not need. And so we advise and assist around that as well. So it's not just on the software side, but it's also across the cloud. And that's extremely important in today's environment, as so many companies are cloud-based.
I just love everything that you're doing here and the ethos behind the company too. And believe it or not, we're only 4 months away from 2024. So I've got to ask, if I was to ask you to look forward, maybe take a glimpse in that virtual crystal ball, what are your aspirations for Crayon, and how do you see the company evolving under your leadership in the months and years ahead?
I'm excited. When I say we're on a growth journey, we have a lot of hunger for continued growth across the financial side. We measure our business around gross profit and EBITDA, but I think, when I look at the business size today, I really aim to double that over the next few years. I believe that we can, and we're going to continue to scale out across the countries that we operate in today, and for that matter, embark on. I believe in a multi-cloud journey. So we're continuing to build up around AWS and Google Cloud as well, because I think at the end of the day, for us to really remain customer-centric, we need to be able to support any environment that the client may be on. So I'm honored to be in a role where I get to be part of a high growth, really attractive place to work. And I get to do what I love each and every day. So it's just watch out. The company's going to continue to grow.
Absolutely love that. We started our conversation today talking about your origin story and the journey that you've been on. And as we've now come full circle, I'm going to ask you to just have a look back at your career and ask you, what's the most interesting story that has happened in your career so far? Because I suspect that you've got a few that you've picked up along the way, but is there an interesting story you could leave everyone with?
I think the most interesting story is, going back to the story I shared with my son, but I can maybe elaborate a little bit further.
Yeah.
I mentioned that he has autism, and I mentioned the story about how AI has really, I think, been used to detect these rare conditions. What I didn't share is that the story didn't stop there. I worked with partners and companies throughout my career. And what I've come to learn is that, and I should have said this too about being a CEO, but you don't always have to be the person in the room with the answer. You're not the smartest person. I say that all the time. I'm not the smartest person. What I do, my role is to hire people that have capabilities that I don't have, that can do the job, that can help offset that. And I think in the case of my son, he didn't speak for a number of years due to his being on the autism spectrum. And that was really hard. As a mother, he couldn't say mom or mama. And again, I was inspired by technology. So I came across a company that was using AI in France. And in this case, they had employees who had children with autism. So they just out of inspiration created an application where it was image detection. So a lot of these children, when they're learning how to speak, they are very visual. And so he could pick, he's hungry, he could pick a picture of an apple and it would say apple back to him. And over time, the visual plus the listening aspect, he was able to learn to speak through this application. It's a common method now for teaching children how to start to speak. But through this, it was AI based. So it started to detect patterns around his behavior, what he liked, disliked, or I shouldn't say disliked, but what he liked. And so it would prompt the images to come up on the screen. And after 4 years of never really being able to speak, he finally said the word mom. And for me, that pulls on my heartstrings because that's where I think when it comes full circle, technology has completely transformed his life. He wouldn't be here today, but now he's finally speaking in sentences, starting to have a conversation with me. And I know that it's because we've really explored the use of technology to influence his development in life. And in the end of the day, as I shared with you, life is short and it's all about the impact we can have. And for me, I think that really is one of my most proud moments.
I think that's a powerful and absolutely beautiful moment to end on, and so important to hear that story as well. I think for a lot of people listening, they're scrolling up and down their news feeds every day, seeing nothing but horror stories around AI. So to hear how it's making such a huge difference to not only your son, but to you and your family as well, absolutely inspirational. And for anyone listening, maybe wanting to find out a little bit more about anything that we talked about today, contact your team, learn more about Crayon. What's the best starting point? Where would you like to point everyone listening?
I would say to our website. You can contact us at crayon.com. And of course, you can always reach out on LinkedIn. So thank you so much for the time today. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Pleasure speaking with you. And I love chatting with you about how to disrupt the profile of what a CEO looks like in the IT industry and why it's so important, what makes a great tech CEO and successful, sharing your journey. And I love that line you use about what you meant by a CEO is a superhuman, not superhuman. So important. And we're all living in a time where shiny technology gets all the headlines and people get distracted by it, but it's all about the people, coaching, guiding, training and development, all those things. And all with the beating heart of the company being you there, and how your son has helped drive that as well. Absolutely beautiful. This story will stay with me a long time after we've recorded this podcast. Just thank you so much for sharing it with me today.
Thank you so much. It's been a total pleasure and enjoyable conversation with you.
Wow. What an incredible journey we've traversed today with Melissa Mulholland of Crayon. From redefining that image of a CEO in the tech world and what that looks like to the transformative power of technology in our personal lives. And today's conversation has been a true testament to the human side of tech leadership. So as I wrap up today, a very big personal thank you to Melissa for gracing our podcast and sharing her wisdom and stories, of which I think will stay with many people, including myself, for many years after this episode airs. And for everybody listening, I'd love to hear your stories. If you've got something you want to share with me, if you want to comment on today's episode, you want me to get a message to Melissa, whatever it is, please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, @NeilC.Hughes. And I hope this episode has inspired you too to keep challenging the status quo, be curious, and hopefully continue to stay tuned to the Tech Talks Daily podcast for more tales of inspiration and innovation. But that's it for today. So a big thank you to each and every one of you, wherever you're listening in the world, for tuning in. Hopefully you'll join me again tomorrow. But until next time, don't be a stranger.